Hello everyone, welcome to another battle report. So this was a game between myself and my good friend Nat. I'm on the vampire counts for the very first time and Nat is on the infernal dwarves. Both Nat and I have, what can I say, magpied, harvested, stolen lists from people online on the 9th Age forum, so neither of us are taking any credit for these lists. We have both modified the lists that we've found, but they're certainly not our work. I'm going to ask you, if you've not done so already, to hit that like and subscribe button, and then we will flash up the army lists in a moment, and you can pause and take a closer look if you want to, and then we will get straight into deployment. Okay, a quick look at deployment then. Let's start with Nat's army list. So he's got 2 slingshots here with a Titan mortar, unit of vassal cavalry, another Titan mortar, Kadim chariots, unit of infernal warriors, a prophet on a Kadim chariot, his prophet with his unit of disciples of Luger, big unit of vassal levies, another unit of infernal warriors, and then he's got his Torok anointed with his Torok commissioner in this unit here. On my side, I have left to right an altar of undeath, a unit of dire wolves, a unit of skeletons with 3 banshees, a unit of zombies, and then a shrieking horror, big unit of skeletons with my vampire count, bat swarms, zombies with my necromancer, another shrieking horror, and another altar of undeath. So we are on map number 1. The deployment type was counter thrust, and the secondary objective is the spoils of war. That's the one where you have to be on top of the centre of the marker at the start of your turn to be able to pick it up. Now, Nat forced me to deploy my dogs first because his cavalry, his vassal cavalry, have a special rule called opposition research, which forces me to do that. He also, in so doing, removed their vanguard special rule, and Nat didn't vanguard either, so there will be no vanguards in this game. But anyway, Nat forced me to deploy that unit, and I won the roll for deployment and elected to deploy my whole army first, so as to get the first turn. So there you go. That's deployments. There will be no vanguards. Let's get into my movement 1. Okay, so my movement 1 here then. And you can see that I have used my Banner of Relentless Company to slingshot out my 3 banshees here. So I'm heading after a combination of the war machines and the dogs. I'm mindful of the slingshots because the slingshots present a meaningful threat to my shrieking horrors, which is why the shrieking horrors have now sort of headed off in this corner, and I'm hoping to use the shrieking horrors to target this Torok anointed unit here. So I'm happy for them to be right over on the side here, in spite of the fact that between them there are 1,000 points. But that's why they're there anyway. I anticipate Nat possibly charging at them with either his Kadim chariot or his fast cavalry, which is why my altar of undeath and my dogs are hanging back here. So what I anticipate is a possible charge here. I think Nat is smart enough not to overrun and shorten the distance, but then a reasonable charge, counter charge here later on. So I'm wondering what's going to happen there, but that's kind of what's going on over there. Zombies moving up here. What I'm planning to do is bolster this unit with lots of arise and get it sitting on top of this marker here, and then basically I know they're going to keep on losing combat, but I'm hoping to sort of tar pit any unit that tries to then take this this horse away. So I'm just going to keep on throwing a rise into it and see if they can survive. I've got these skeletons here now. I'm possibly going to use them to sort of supplement the zombies. If someone sort of charges at the zombies, maybe that's a rough plan over there. Vampire moving forwards in the middle here, keeping his 18-inch bubble useful for marches elsewhere. I've realised I've perhaps played the Necromancer a little bit badly because I've got him in this zombie unit here, and I'm trying to kind of go after this marker with the zombies, and again lots of arise and just hold it and then use the vampire and the skeletons as a sort of threat to anyone that might try and take this. But I think I'm realising straight away at this point in the game that's not a very good idea, because that's going to force my Necromancer into combat, and he's not equipped for combat at all. So I've decided to hang back instead there. I think what I ought to have done is put one of the zombie units behind the big unit with the Necromancer in it and just bunker him. Anyway, over here, so the Shrieking Horrors, as mentioned, going after the Taurochs, and then I've brought the Altar of Undeath up here. Now, this is a 350 point unit. It's a good piece of bait. And what I'm hoping that will do is charge at it, smash it to pieces, of course, and that will allow my Shrieking Horrors to move into position to start screaming at it. You've got to dangle something worth him taking. If I were to put the bats here, then I don't think he would go for it. So leaving the bats here, let him smash through the horrors, drop the bats in the way, turn 2, and then just kind of maneuver around him with the Shrieking Horrors is the idea. Right, on to my end of turn 1. Okay, so end of my turn 1 here then. I did actually forget to do the dangerous terrains during my movement phase, and we corrected that a little bit later on. So with the zombies in the middle there, we've arisen some but lost some for dangerous terrain, so that's what's going on there. Really poor shooting phase. The 3 Banshees, each doing d6 plus 2 strength 4 hits against this this resilience 4 target. It has a 6-up armor save. They have AP 1. Has only done 3 wounds. I was expecting to rip through one and be able to damage another, but no, a real underperformance from them, which is a shame. But there you go. That was it for turn 1. So quite a meek turn 1 from my Vampire Covenant. Into Nat's movement 1 here then, and you can see that he's got 2 charges off, one against one of the Banshees with his Kadim Chariot here, and his Tauroch Anointed and his Commissioner against the Altar of Undeath here. He did also declare a charge with the Infernal Dwarves at this Banshee here, but he failed the charge. And I'm quite glad that he did, actually, because I don't think I have anything on this side of the board that could face off against this unit here, so I'm feeling pretty happy about that Chariot being there, because I think I can run into it, but I would be somewhat more cautious about that unit there. Other than that, edging forwards, really manoeuvring with his chariots and his units, so yeah, all good there. That's the end of Nat's movement 1. Okay, so this is the end of Nat's turn 1, and he's had a really good turn 1. In his magic phase, he managed to get off the Scorching Salvo, which did a wound to this Banshee here. Killed a skeleton, not so bothered about that one. Couple of wounds on some zombies, few wounds on some skeletons, I think down here, and a couple more wounds at the zombies over here. So not really bothered about those, but I am a little bit bothered about my Banshee, because what he's then done is also caused a further wound on the Banshee with shooting from his vassal cavalry. So this Banshee is down to 1 wound. His vassal slingshots caused 3 wounds on my Altar of Undeath. How did they do that with 2 shots? Well, they have battle focus because they are right next to a Titan mortar, and they both rolled a 6 when rolling to hit. So their 2 shots became 4 hits, 3 of which wounded. So yeah, that was pretty annoying. A wound on the skeletons from a mortar, I think, which was quite hilarious. Did hit 16 hits, caused a total of 1 wound, but I would much rather have had an overperformance against the skeletons and an underperformance against the Altar of Undeath, I think. But anyway, that's just the way that it goes. And then the other mortar has done 6 wounds to my dire wolves over here as well. The chariot has killed off the banshee, as you would quite expect it to do, and that has held there. So a bit of a long-ish charge here. We'll see how that goes. And the Torok Anointed have ripped through the altar and reformed over here. Again, exactly what you would expect. So a really good turn 1 from Nat's magic, and particularly his shooting. Upper hand to Nat at this point, I think. Right, let's get on to my movement turn 2. Okay, into my movement 2 then, and I've just had the 2 charges, both at the Kadim chariot here, one with the Altar of Undeath, and then a further charge with what remains of the direwolf. So I'm expecting with the impact hits and some devastating direwolf charges. I know they're not particularly strong, but I'm expecting between the 2 of them to be able to take out the chariot. It rather depends on the performance of the Altar of Undeath, really, but we'll see how that goes. Drop the bats here in front of this unit as planned earlier in my previous turn, and then the 2 Shrieking Horrors out of the arc of vision of the Torok Anointed here, and I'm going to start screaming at this unit. Banshees into the ruins, protect them from the shooting of the cavalry here, and the cavalry is going to have a hard time charging them, dangerous terrains and what have you, should they choose to come this way, and they're not particularly great targets for the cavalry anyway, but we're just kind of hanging around on the edge of the unit here now and sort of screeching at these war machines is the idea. These markers, of course, belong to this Banshee, forgot to move those. Zombies on top of the marker here, and I've had the Necromancer jump into this unit here now, and then off this zombie unit goes to take this marker. Yeah, and that's it. There you go. That's my movement 2. Okay, end of my turn 2 here. Apologies, I've trimmed off the edge of the board on this photograph. That was a little careless. So in my magic phase, I have got the Dead Arise on a unit of zombies here, and what I'm thinking to do is to create another unit for my Necromancer to kind of bunker in, and then have these 2 units as tar pits over the secondary objectives. So that's what's going on there. And then I've got a couple of cases of Arise off on the 2 units here, making both of these zombie units a bit bigger. Shrieking Horrors have done 10 wounds on the Anointed, which is a slight overperformance. They should have done 8, but yeah, 10 there anyway. And then the Banshees have done 2 wounds on the Vassal Cavalry with their Shriek, who fled and then ran through the mortar and off the board, so I was quite happy with that. And then the other Banshee did a couple of wounds to the slingshot. It was still alive, but then the Altar of Undeath, which can shoot even when it's in combat with its aura attack, did 1 further wound on the slingshot, finishing it off, so I was pretty happy about that. He also took the Kadim chariot with him, did some wounds on that, because you can shoot into combat, so you can shoot when you're in combat and you can shoot into combat as well with that thing, so that's pretty impressive. And between that and the impact hits, it took out the Kadim chariot and did a wound on an Infernal Warrior in the process as well, so a good performance from that. The only sort of downside to it is that with the Banshee being here, I've bounced off my own unit, so of course these warriors can now charge at my Altar of Undeath here, but That's going to bring this unit, kind of quite far out here, fairly out of the game. I don't really have anything that I can do about it there when I'm looking to kind of secure these two objectives and get the majority of them. So yeah, take that. Just have to deal with it later. Okay, Nat's movement 2 here then, and Nat has failed a few charges. He was trying to double charge this unit of zombies, and I hadn't noticed that the flank charge of the vassal levies that could be made there. So I'm quite glad that he failed with the disciples, because I think that they might have smashed through all of these zombies with the disciples in as well. But I don't think the vassal levies by themselves can pull it off too quickly. He charged at the altar with his warriors over here, but failed that charge. So that's 2 failed charges. These were both on, I think, 7s, so they're about 50-50 to be made, but a little bit unlucky for Nat there, I think. And then, of course, he's charged at the bats here, which he's got to do. He's got to get the chaff out of the way. So that's the end. Oh, charge here as well, of course, on this unit of zombies. So Nat coming after the secondary objectives, quite rightly. That's the end of Nat's movement 2. Okay, on to the end of Nat's turn 2 here then. So in the magic phase, he got Silver Spike off against the dire wolves and made the skeletons here flammable. And then he got Glory of Gold off on the vassal levies here and made these zombies flammable. So the zombies, as you can see, died in droves, as did the skeletons when they had a mortar dropped on them. The other mortar misfired though, so it can't shoot this turn or next turn. And the Torok Anointed here smashed through the bats, as you would very much expect them to. So, there you go. That was the end of Nat's turn 2. Okay, on to my movement 3 here then. So, I wasn't able to charge the vassal levies with this unit because the necromancer was in it, and I think I've played the necromancer really badly right from the start of the game. So anyway, I've moved him over now into this bunker, and what I'm planning to do is throw every arise imaginable into this unit here to give them enough to hold out against this unit until the end of Nat's turn is the plan. Banshees just moving over in the ruins here, putting some distance between the Banshees and the Infernal Warriors here so that I can keep on screaming and screeching. Dogs moving up over here just because I might as well put them there. They can't do anything now in this game, but I don't want to give away the points easily, so I'm just planning to leave them in the corner. Vampire Count's unit here just ready for later on, either going into the Infernal Warriors here or the Vassal Levies is the idea. And then the 2 Shrieking Horrors are now plopped behind this unit and can screech at it for a couple of turns is the plan. There you go, that's the end of my movement 3. Okay, so on to my turn 3 here then, and it was a really poor magic phase. In spite of having the card number 8, which gave me 7 extra Veil tokens, plus those from the channel, and I think I'd saved one from the previous turn, although I might be wrong about that. But anyway, in spite of all of that, I only managed to get 1 copy of Arise off, and that only raised me 7 zombies. So that plan in the middle has completely flopped, and I reflected on this after the game, and what I realised I was doing, the mistake I was making was casting the small version of Arise and sort of thinking like a Dread Elf player, when really what I should have been doing was trying less cast attempts, but putting them into bigger bigger versions. The 6-inch Aura version, I think, was the one I ought to have been going for. So anyway, that was completely flopped in the middle, but I did get Whispers of the Veil off on the Anointed unit so that my Shrieking Horrors could wound the Torok Commissioner as well as his unit on 2s. Now, with 12 auto hits, they wiped out the unit, and then I rolled my 4 shots on him, wounding him on 2s. I rolled 4 1s. So I'm absolutely livid that this guy is still alive. Couple of wounds on the mortar over here from the Banshees, which is another underperformance. It's resilience 4, their strength 4. So I really feel like that the dice are stitching me up in turn 3, although this is a problem of my own making for sure. Yeah, that was it for my turn 3. Pretty sad, pretty sad. Okay, now as those of you who have watched my channel for a while will know, it is customary to forget at least one photograph during the game, and Nat's movement 3 was that photograph. So what happened was that his vassal levies had charged at my Necromancer's unit, and his Torok Anointed, which had survived the Shrieking Horror assault, had charged at my Vampire Count Skeletons unit here, and then his disciples had charged at the skeleton warriors that I'd put there as a sort of a delay or a road bump, if you like. So in Nat's turn, he had got off Scorching Salvo, which took out my Dire Wolves, which was a bit of a waste, I thought, actually, to be honest. It killed a couple of Dire Wolves. I mean, I don't think they justify the points, but I'm not sure what else Nat had to cast, to be fair. So anyway, that was that. The Disciples, as you would expect, took out 5 skeletons in no time at all, and the Vassal Levies, I completely stitched my Necromancer up, and they quite understandably charged and slaughtered my unit and killed my Necromancer in the process. So now I've just got the Vampire Count with the 3 spells. The zombies died in droves against the Infernal Warriors here. My Arise attempts earlier in my phase had come to naught, so that was a foregone conclusion as well. But the Anointed Commissioner had charged at my unit here, and this was a mistake because my unit had 4 ranks, because it has the Legion standard plus a von Karstein Vampire and a standard. So I was on static combat resolution of 6. So he came in, did 4 wounds and a charge, and still lost combat and broke and ran and was caught, which is why my skeleton unit with my vampire ended up there. So there you go. That was the end of Nat's movement and turn 3. Okay, on to my movement 4 here then. Just the 1 charge, well, 2 charges on the 1 unit really. 2 Screaming Horrors on the unit of Infernal Warriors over here. Reformed the Vampire Covenant with the skeletons, and then moved up 4 inches so as to get the majority of the unit out of the forest so that we can be steadfast, and the Banshees continuing to hang out in the ruins and screech at the war machines is the plan up there. Feeling quite depleted at this point, but I think it's worth remembering that the majority of the Banshees are still functioning, the Vampire Count is still there, and the 2 Screaming Horrors are still here. So although I've taken quite a bit of a pounding up to this point, it's been the flimsy units and the low value stuff that's gone, with the exception of the Necromancer, of course. So yeah, there you go. Anyway, that's the end of my movement 4. Okay, end of my turn 4 here then. And in the magic phase, I got the Dead Arise, brought up a unit of zombies, and then supplemented that with an Arise. And the plan here really is to add some ranks and a few extra attacks on the side. I know they're only zombie attacks, but it's better than nothing. So I'm leaving them there so that when the vassal levies charge this unit, and obviously they won't get through it, then the zombies can do a counter charge in turn 5, being the idea there. The banshees screamed off the slingshot over here, and the horrors won combat against the warriors as you would expect them to, but of course they are light troops, so the warriors were steadfast and held. That's the end of my turn 4. Okay, and on to Nat's movement 4 here then. So he toyed with the idea of some long charges with these units that he has here, which were over here at the end of my turn, but decided instead anyway to advance, march properly, so that he could guarantee that he could bring his units to bear in turn 5. So I think that was the right choice. And then he's just had a charge here with the vassal levies into the vampire counts unit. So that's the end of Nat's movement 4. Okay, end of Nat's turn 4 here then. So we got Cascading Fire off in the magic phase, as well as the hereditary spell on the skeletons. And then in the combat phase, the horrors finished off the warriors, which didn't come as a surprise, and the levies actually won combat on account of the flammable attack, the flammable attacks that this unit had. I think they have that from the flaming banner from memory, and them being flammable. But I only lost combat by 2, and the vampire actually brought back 5 skeletons. So I'm actually up by 3 at the end of the turn. So there you go. Turn 4 really favouring me, I think. It's interesting actually how the game is sort of yo-yoing. Turn 2 and 4 have certainly been mine, and turn 1 and 3 definitely Nat's. So end of Nat's 4 there. Okay, on to my movement 5 here then, and there have been 3 charges, a flank charge by the zombies into this vassal levies unit here, and then a double charge onto the disciples from the 2 shrieking horrors here, or screaming horrors here. The banshees have moved up across the ruins because I'm thinking ahead here. I'm wanting the banshees to go after this mortar in turn 6, so we're heading in this direction now, so that after we've moved in turn 6, when we end up sort of somewhere here, we'll be in range. So take out this mortar first and then go after this one later if possible. That's the end of my movement 5. Okay, so end of my turn 5 here then. So in the magic phase, I got the bigger version, the aura version of a rise off. That undid some damage to my horrors, brought me some skeletons, brought me some zombies, so I feel it's a little bit late in the day, but I'm playing that a little bit better now. In the shooting phase, the banshees screamed off the mortar up here in the ruins, and then in combat, the horrors won, but the prophet still held out. They only won very slightly. They had a really poor performance. When you think they were dishing out sort of 10, 11 attacks at the time and 2 thunderstomps, I think they killed about 4 of the prophets. These are strength 10 attacks, wounding on 3s, and then the thunderstomps are wounding on 2s. So I was very disappointed with the outcome over there. The vassal levies broke against the vampire and the zombies, these 2 units combined. I decided to reform with the vampire because I didn't want this unit to get flank charged, and just went after them with the zombies, who did catch them. So the zombies made a bit of a difference there. So well done them. There you go. That was the end of my turn 5. Okay, Nat's movement 5 here then, and of course the only thing that's happened in the movement phase is the charge of the Prophet and the unit of Infernal Warriors here into my Vampires unit. So that was short and simple. End of Nat's movement 5. Okay, so on to the end of Nat's turn 5 here then. So in the magic phase, Nat casts Glory of Gold on his Prophet, and this gives him flaming attacks and divine attacks, which is of course a big problem for my vampire count, because if he gets this spell off, which as you can see he did, then my vampire A becomes flammable against flaming attacks, and B has to re-roll his Aegis, Aegis save. So Nat put 4 dice into this, rolling 19. I put 6 dice into the Dispel attempt and failed the Dispel attempt, so I was pretty unhappy about that. Nat also got the Curse of Nizibikesh, that's the Infernal Dwarves hereditary spell, off on one of the horrors here, and of course the disciples have a flaming attack because they've set themselves on fire early in the game. I think I forgot to mention that. So yeah, I was pretty unhappy about that. And then he also got Cascading Fire off against the skeletons as well. So that was a pretty impressive magic phase for Nat, where he got off all 3 spells, and the dice very much went his way on that occasion. In the shooting phase, the mortar finished off the Banshee that has been limping around wounded for a good long while, so there's 1 Banshee left up there. So then in combat, the horrors actually lost. The Screaming Horrors lost against about 8 disciples. Their attacks profile had been somewhat diminished last time, but the double Thunder Stomp rolled a double 1, which meant that they were going to lose combat, and you can see that their wounds counters have gone down significantly as a result. And then the combat over here with the vampire count, Nat won that. He caused a wound on the vampire, but he didn't issue a challenge, and so the vampire was able to take some wounds off the infernal dwarves and reclaim 1 back and supplement the unit a little bit, but still a little bit precarious over here. And of course these spells will remain in play. I was a little bit lucky with his saves actually, because this Prophet really had the odds stacked in his favour, and I did get off a few 4+ Aegis saves, which I had to re-roll and still got them. But the double 1 here with the horrors, and then the fact that this spell got through on 4 dice when I'd put 6 into it really had me cursing at the time. Anyway, there you go. That's the end of Nat's turn 5. Okay, so into my movement 6, and just the 1 move, bringing the Banshee into screeching range of this mortar. It's unlikely that the Banshee can inflict enough damage to score any points, but you never know with dice games. Right, that's my movement 6, onto my turn 6. Okay, so end of my turn 6 here then, and you can see the Banshee only managed a single wound on the mortar, but there are no surprises there. And then in the magic phase I got a rise, or a version of a rise, so I brought myself back a few skeletons and recovered a wound on each of my horrors. However, in the combat phase, Nat, with his battle focus, he got 4 hits off, I think, three attempts, because 1 was battle focused, and then he had his flaming as well, so he was re-rolling to wound, and he took out 1 Screaming Horror. But I thought, you know what, that's still okay, because the horror is still going to punch through this unit. Roll my 5 attacks, which automatically hit. I'm wounding on 3s. I got 3 1s and a 2. So I thought, it's okay. Still got the Thunder Stomp. 1. I thought, you know what, there just doesn't seem to be anything I can do here to finish this unit off. So that was that. And then the unit here, the vampire count unit, drew. Massive underperformance from the vampire, and he's got one wound left because of the cumulative effects of the spell from last turn. So yeah, the vampire didn't inflict a single wound. He has 5 attacks, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s. Admittedly, the Prophet has a 4-up Aegis, but I was expecting at least 1 to go through and then get a vampiric roll from 5 strength 6 attacks, but no, wasn't to be. So that was the end of my turn 6. Okay, so this is the end of Nat's turn 6. There was no movement phase because Nat had no models to move. So he got 5d6 Glory of Gold off on his Prophet. I had 5d6 plus 1 because I've got the crystal ball to dispel it. But it got through, but you know what? 5d6 against 5d6 plus 1, it's as good as evens, isn't it? And he got the Curse of Nizbakesh off on the Shrieking Horror as well. Killed a few zombies with his mortar, but nobody cares about that. And then the vampire count against the Prophet. We're in a challenge now, we're in a duel. But again, the vampire has done 0 wounds. That's the second combat in a row that the vampire, with his offensive skill 7, 5, strength 6 attacks, has done 0 damage. And then the Prophet comes back with his battle focus, and he's got the spell off again, but this time it's fair enough that he's got the spell off, and he finishes off the vampire. But I feel hard done by with my vampire having died there, because I don't think he should have got Glory of Gold off in turn 5, and so that those 2 wounds that had been inflicted by right, I'm not sure that's the right word, but really ought not have been, because, well, as I said before, you know, you put 6 dice into a dispel attempt against 4 dice, you expect, you know, to finish that off comfortably. But as a consequence of that dreadful dice roll, the vampire has finally succumbed at the end of Nat's turn 6. The Shrieking Horror finished off the disciples, but the Prophet passed his leadership test, his discipline test, on a 6, and then the Ashes to Ashes rule has killed off the Banshee at the end of the game. So I always like to reflect on games and sort of ask myself, well, what did I do wrong? And what went wrong in spite of doing the right thing as well? And I can't find a counter argument to the view that the Prophet was extremely lucky. I mean, that he was hanging around in combat with a kitted up vampire. He should not have survived as long as he did. And the Shrieking Horror's underperformance against the disciples, I mean, that was a massive underperformance. 3 thunderstomps on a 1, let alone the failure to hit on 4 out of 5 occasions. To wound on 4 out of 5 occasions, wounding on 3s. But I think that the biggest game changer, I think the hinge moment in the game, was when Nat got that Glory of Gold with 4 dice off against 6 dice, which caused the vampire to have 2 wounds before turn 6 that he likely wouldn't have done, and in turn finished off the vampire when we got to the end of turn 6, which is a 910 point swing just by itself, which would have taken the result to a draw at a 10-10. And then if the Shrieking Horrors had actually performed, that could have, quite easily gone into a sort of a minor victory of sorts. But anyway, it is a dice game after all, and the final result was a 13-7 to Nat. So well done, Nat. I do think I made 2 fairly serious mistakes in this game, though. It was my first game with a vampire count, so I shouldn't be too hard on myself. But earlier on in the game, I was casting the small versions of Arise 1 unit at a time, and I don't think I was forcing Nat's hand enough. I think I ought to have cast the 6-inch Aura version and gone for less spells at higher casting values
sort of force the issue. And when I get one through, then it buffs multiple units rather than one. But without doubt, my biggest mistake was the way I played the Necromancer. I got him wrong all the way from the start of the game. First deploying him in a unit that would then transpire to need to go and get the secondary objective, and then putting him in with my vampire count in turn 2, which meant that my vampire count's unit couldn't charge in turn 3, and then counting on that zombie wall to hold, and leaving my necromancer exposed in a raised unit that didn't need to be placed where it was. I could have easily just put that behind the vampire count's unit instead of on the side of it, and I created the opportunity for Nat to charge that unit. So I thoroughly deserved to lose my necromancer. Anyway, that was the end of the game. Nat won by, like I say, a good 1,000 points and 13-7. So congratulations, Nat. I've quite enjoyed playing the vampire counts. They're a tricky army to play. The positioning is really quite challenging to get right, but quite enjoyable, I think, when you get it right. So I'm going to stick at it. Another game coming up this weekend, so we'll see how that goes. Anyway, that's all for now, guys. I hope you've enjoyed this one. Hope you've learned one or two things. I certainly have. See you next time. Thanks, everybody.